India, the world's third largest crude oil importer, has an existing storage capacity of 5.3 million tons at Visakhapatnam, Mangaluru, and Padur, built at an investment of $600 million in the first phase. This is operational and can support 9.5 days of net imports. In addition, the government has approved the construction of an additional 6.5 million tons of strategic crude oil reserves. Strategic crude oil reserves, which are typically state-funded and meant to tackle emergency situations, allow a country to tide over short-term supply disruptions. International Energy Agency members maintain emergency oil reserves equivalent to at least 90 days of net imports. India will have oil reserves equivalent to at least 87 days of net imports once the $1.6 billion second phase of Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserves, which aims to add 12 days of crude storage, is operational. These facilities together will help support 22 days of India's crude oil requirements. Indian refiners also maintain about 65 days of crude storage, taking the total tally to 87 days. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze India's strategic oil reserves and energy security. Joining me on the program today are Tarun Kapoor, Secretary, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas; Narendra Taneja, Energy Expert; and Surojit Gupta, Senior Editor of the Times of India. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. All right, Mr. Kapoor, let me start the program with you first. Let's first try and understand and analyze what is the state of India's strategic oil reserves.
So thank you very much. Now, as you just mentioned, we have this storage capacity available with us. And recently, we've been able to fill up these caverns. And we've been able to buy the crude at a price which was at the lowest. The average price at which we bought this crude is coming to around $21. Now the price has again gone up. It's again moving between, say, $32, $33, sometimes even going higher than that. And then, as you also mentioned, that we also have some storage capacity with our refineries. That capacity has also been filled up. Our oil companies have been able to buy some oil which is on the high seas because some storage is possible in the ships also in between when the price had really gone down. So a lot of countries were trying to buy oil and store. So the shipping costs had also gone up. But now in the last few days, again, it's come down slightly. We were also looking at options of getting some storage on rent in other countries. We are still working on it, but then there are other costs associated, because if you put oil in some cavern, you have to pump it in, then you have to pump it out, and then you have to transport it. So then all that has to be taken into account. So if we try to store oil for long durations, sometimes the cost can go higher than the price increase which we expect during this period. So all that has to be considered. Our oil companies are working on it, and we are looking at various options. But right now, what we needed to do was to fill up whatever storage we had, which we've done. And I think as far as that is concerned, we are quite okay now.
Okay, all right. Narendra Taneja, so why is it important for us to have strategic oil reserves? And for a country like India, what would you say would be ideal?
Well, I think the first question we need to ask is, oil is storage for what? Why do we need to store, go for storage? I mean, if we are thinking of storage because sometime when the prices are low, as we have seen the last few weeks, then we can store. And if that is the idea, I don't think that's a very sustainable idea. You don't get you get such opportunity when the oil prices are as low as we have seen maybe once in 20 years, once in 30 years. So, making an investment of the kind of size that you talked about in your introduction, I think that is not really very good economy. The question is, for a country of India's size and geographical parking, we need storage because we happen to be the largest, emerging economy, which is most vulnerable when it comes to, oil security, securing oil. That's our challenge. In 1971, during the Bangladesh war, two major companies, they refused to sell oil to India because we were not on the side of the United States. And they were kind of given this directive, all right, don't sell oil to India, in order to put pressure on India. So kind of, position we enjoy geopolitically, economically, and the kind of role we look upon when it comes to future for India, I think it's important that we are, to the extent possible, we are secure in terms of oil supply into India. Right now, we are importing roughly 86%, and according to OPEC and number of other independent organizations, our dependence on imported oil will touch almost 90% very soon in the coming 10 years or so. So, India is still largely, broadly speaking, an oil economy. So, therefore, I think we need storage for number one, so that in the event of a situation that we are attacked, or there are kind of some military tension in the Indian Ocean, because most of all our oil comes by by sea. It's important that we are secure. So we make some facilities on land in India, let's say, for which is enough for us to meet the requirement, let's say, of 45 days when it comes to our Indian Armed Forces, Indian Railways, Indian Aviation, and so on and so forth. Basically, the essentials, we maintain that. At the same time, that we have got oil assets overseas, with ships owned by either Indian entities or India under flag, so that we can bring that. So on the one hand, I think India, we should be going more aggressively, building these facilities in India for storage, make sure that we have this capacity for at least 45 days. But at the same time, when the prices are as low as they are today, we should be aggressively hunting for oil assets overseas and buy them. And those will be our oil, but geographically located in other places. But that's perfectly open. That's what China has done. You see, I think we should be going by. Presently, I think the best opportunity we have is now, and it will remain the next 3 months, when we should be going aggressively overseas and acquire oil assets and treat that oil, which would still be underground, as Indian asset. Indian oil, geographically parked there. That's perfectly okay. And then also we should make sure that our shipping company or our oil company, they acquire some ships, their own ships, so that whenever necessary, we can bring that oil to India. And so that over the next 7 or 8 years, we have built a kind of storage in India or overseas with Indian ships for at least 70 to 80 days, just like International Energy Agency or OECD countries, they do. So I think that should be broadly the kind of map that we should be following, and we should not hesitate to involve private sector in it. We should also not hesitate to involve the Indian public in terms of their investment to such ventures, but make sure that, as broadly speaking, these should be entirely Indian-owned assets, whether in India or overseas.
Okay. All right. That's what we should focus on. Indian-owned assets going forward in the next 3 months are crucial, is what you're suggesting. Let me bring in Surajit Gupta now into the picture. As far as the low oil prices are concerned, do you believe that we've been able to take full use of it or make full use of it, Surajit?
Yeah, as Mr. Kapoor has been telling us, it's a perfect. It makes perfect sense to store oil whatever we can. It's about 20% of our annual needs. If you look at countries like Australia, they are also thinking in terms of storing oil in the US. Mr. Taneja talks about Indian-owned oil assets. I don't think this is the right time to, because every economy, and an economy like India, is grappling with several issues. You have to take care of the needs of the economy. Yes, India has been able to take advantage of the low oil prices. It has helped us in our maintaining the deficit at reasonable levels, and demand is expected to be low for the next 1 or 2 years. So it makes perfect sense to build such reserves, store oil wherever we can, but it's expensive business. But also, in say 6 months' time or 1 year's time, you should also explore where you can get, where you can have strategic or investments, Indian-owned assets. But it's not going to be easy.
Okay. It's not going to be easy to do any of this, is what the panelists are suggesting, or is what Surajit is suggesting. So 2 points of views coming through, Mr. Kapoor. One saying that we should be, we should be go-getters, go and hunt for some oil assets abroad. The other saying that, it might not be viable at this point in time. What are your thoughts?
So I think this is a very important issue which Mr. Taneja has raised. India has acquired some assets in the past also, and we have assets in several countries as of now. In some of these assets, are just investments where we made investment, we get a return on it, depending on how that particular company does. In some cases, we have rights to buy the oil or take the oil in proportion to our equity. So that then gives us a right, we can take it or we can leave it. It gives us a right over that particular quantity of oil. Now, this is the time when some assets are priced low also. So maybe we can look at some assets if they are available cheap and we can go for more acquisitions. But on the other side, we also have a situation of overproduction. We also have a situation of low demand, and which is going to remain as such for quite some time. That's what all the projections are. And therefore, whatever investment we make today is not going to fetch us very good returns. If we try to acquire assets now, maybe in the short run, it may not fetch us very good returns, but then there could be opportunities where the asset is available at a price which is much cheaper, and it might make sense. So whatever we do, everything has to be, it has to be a business decision, because it's money going in, and then the long-term sustainability, the long-term security is also very important, and money is also important. So all these this has to be weighed in. There is a third aspect to it. We also have to try and see that we distribute our oil contracts amongst various countries so that we are not dependent on just one region. So right now, most of our oil is coming from the Gulf, and we are also looking at supplies from elsewhere, other parts of the world. So in case there is an emergency and some part of the world is in crisis, we can't transport on a particular route, we should have other alternatives. So that is another area we are seriously considering. There are a lot of other changes also happening in the world and also in India. So there is a little bit of shift towards more and more use of LNG. There is also lots happening on biofuels and certain things which we can produce within the country, which may take a lot of time to have a very major impact on our total oil requirements or whatever we are importing to bring it down. But then whatever we can do to improve our own production, be it through biofuels, be it through trying to do a little more of exploration within the country and trying to get some higher production within the country. So all these factors are very important. They may take time, but then we have to look at long term, we have to look at short run. So I think we are trying to look at all these aspects. I don't totally rule out acquiring assets at this time, but then everything depends on the economics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Everything depends on economics, and that's why we are looking at trying to take the advantage of the low oil prices as well. This issue of self-reliance and alternate fuels, it's an interesting one. I'm going to come back to it a little later on in the program to get your views on that as well. But before that, Mr. Taneja, you know, clearly asset acquisition is going to take some time. It's not something that can happen immediately. But looking at the short term, what do you believe needs to be done in the immediate near future to take advantage of the situation that we have at hand?
I think, we have to keep in mind, first of all, we got to take a long-term view. It's important, because if we think that, oil is kind of going to, our dependence on oil is going to come down anytime soon, that's not going to happen. Today, we consume roughly 5 million barrels of oil a day, 5 million barrels. And even if, for instance, we push the renewable agenda further, we use more, natural gas, or we use even more coal, even then we will be probably over the coming next 15 to 17 years, we will be consuming 9 million barrels of oil per day. 9 million barrels. So where is that oil going to come from? Today, I'm talking everything in terms of and in the context of energy security. 92% of Indian oil is carried by foreign ships. Is that a very good idea for a country of India's size? The kind of threats that we face from the north, east, west, south, everywhere. 92%. We are dependent on foreign ships. Name one country like China. Look at them. 70% of their, oil is carried by Chinese ships, owned by Chinese, whether on the Chinese mainland or overseas. While our is a different story. So we need to protect ourselves there. And number two, the point is when we look at a strategic commodity like oil, yes, economics is everything, but it's important we take a kind of view. We are looking at economics not in terms of one quarter or two quarter or one fiscal, but let's say for 5 to 8 years, and then work backward and see what is important for us. As we grow economically, as we grow in terms of our influence globally, politically and militarily, we are going to win more friends. No, we are going to actually get more enemies. People are going to make sure that we don't succeed further in moving northward in terms of our size, capacity, and everything. And oil will remain. Renewable is future. But for next 20 years, oil is central to economies like India. We still have 70% of people, when you look at the per capita oil consumption of 70% of Indian, is pathetic. And tomorrow, we are a democracy. They're going to ask for more oil. If I drive a better car, you can't deny a better car to these people who today consume maybe not even 1 liter of oil in a quarter or in a fortnight. So we got to look at all these things. When I look at the table, I look at the social, political, cultural, economic, all these aspects, and then basically, reach to the conclusion in terms of storage. In storage is important. We build our own capacity, as I say, 45 days minimum. At the same time, investing overseas and taking a view of overseas investment more in the context of energy security. Number two, we also build bridges with those countries which we think that we can rely upon in case of a military emergency. Countries like, for instance, the countries we perceive as friends, for instance, Japan, of Australia in the Indian Ocean area, or the United States, and so on and so forth. But that's how we got to look at it. We can't really pick up one thread and say, all right, when it comes to our oil storage and in the context of energy security, that's the thread we need to follow. There is a multiple kind of things that we need to follow. It's a rainbow approach we will need to follow. But keep in mind, renewable is the future. But for next 20 years, we need more oil. And when it comes to gas also, our dependence on our dependence on imported natural gas is close to 50%, is only going to go up, as we move in the direction of, gas-based economy. Or if we want to produce more electricity using gas, again, that will be, we'll need to import. We are unfortunately not as blessed in terms of oil and gas reserves, or forgettable reserves, potential as some other countries. So even China roughly produces 9 million barrels of oil a day, whether in China or in overseas assets or assets where they've invested. So we got to, look at this thing very carefully, think strategically. Yes, economics is. I was saying that it's important to play this role. There are areas where the government would need to play a role, and government should be looking at economics, but government should not be looking at economics of energy security and oil storage and acquiring oil and gas assets overseas the same way, for instance, a company would do. Government should be looking at it more strategically and looking at oil and gas assets especially in friendly geographies like in Africa or in Latin America or Russia, in other places where we have some good relations, and use that also, and build bridges. At the same time, the last point I want to make is important that we use our good relation with countries like Iran, countries like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Kuwait, and persuade these countries to come and invest in India, invest in oil storage, for instance. Invest in upstream assets, invest in deep water and ultra deep water in terms of exploration production. So there are many ways to look at these things. Ideas to build this interdependence and bridges and make sure that we are absolutely secure when it comes to oil security for our economy.
Okay, all right. Mr. Kapoor, I know you have to be elsewhere, but bear with me for just 5 more minutes. I'm going to come back to you for another reaction. Let me get a reaction in from Surojit first. Surojit Gupta, as far as challenges are concerned, what do you believe are the biggest challenges for our energy security needs, or in securing our energy security?
I mean, it needs a lot of investment. So we are talking about economics, we are talking about money. And like Mr. Kapoor says, it has to make business sense. What is the rate of return? So all these factors will have to be taken. Even if we involve our private sector, they'll look at what is the rate of return. So all these challenges will remain. But let me add one point. The post-COVID world will be very different from what we are seeing now. there will be a shift to other forms of energy, renewable, electric. So I think we should not close our options on those. And I think work will go on in diversifying our energy basket.
Okay, all right. Taking the discussion forward now, so Mr. Kapoor, is there anything else that is being planned? You spoke about biofuels. Maybe using biofuels as a complete alternative to fossil fuels is not possible anytime soon. But what about maybe mixing the two and trying to be far more self-reliant? Because that seems to be the flavor of the season, and we need to move forward in that particular direction. Maybe the use of ethanol, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, before that, I'll just would like to say that while the economic part I stressed on is very important, but in this last strategic reserve filling which we've done, the caverns, government has put in the money, where we didn't bother about the returns or anything, because that is strategic. So we do look at the strategic part, and also look at the commercial part. But then the strategic part also has a commercial angle. So there's a limit to what government can invest without looking for returns. So that's why we have to balance this. Now coming to biofuels and bio CNG and all the other domestic attempts which we can make. Now this is an area where the scope is huge. The agriculture residue available in the country is enough to cover the entire requirement of the country, but the price sometimes can be very high. So I was just reviewing some bioethanol projects just before this. And what we find is that we have some proposals with 2G technology, and the price is coming to say 80 rupees a liter. Now, this is an area where a lot of work has to be done, not only in India, but a lot of development might be taking place all over the world. And with volumes, the price will come down. But then someone has to take the initiative, someone has to move this forward, and the price will gradually come down. That's what happened in solar. So the price came down so drastically. So here, as volumes rise, the price will come down, technologies will mature, raw material is available in the country, it also benefits the farmer, it creates a full chain where we generate employment, we go into energy security, and we also are looking at the environmental angle. So therefore, this is an area I give a lot of importance to. I think this is an area we really need to work on. And then I come to the gas part of it, the gas-based economy we are talking about. So right now, the country is trying to connect all parts of all the states through gas pipeline, which has happened to a large extent, but there are some parts which work is still going on, and that will also happen very soon. And then we are looking at supplying gas to various cities, which is the city-based gas distribution network. So that is another big area where a lot of work is happening, and I think in the next 3-4 years, the whole scenario might change. The gas usage in the country, which is currently at 6.3% of the primary energy mix in the country, and the target is to go to 15%. The world is at 24%. So we should be able to move ahead on that also, and that fuel is a little cleaner. The import dependence is a little lower there currently. Currently, we are able to produce larger quantities within the country, and I think we have reserves. If we really go aggressive on that, then there might be a good chance of finding more gas within India. It is cleaner also. So therefore, a shift towards bio, a shift towards gas is the way forward. That's what I think.
And talking about the way forward, yeah, go ahead, Mr. Taneja. You wanted to add something,
Yeah,
and also this will be, and add in your concluding remarks also, because I'll have to wind up the program soon.
You see, very quickly, you see, first post-COVID-19, a role of conventional energy, that's oil and gas, is only going to grow because the COVID-19 has delivered a bit of a setback to renewables in terms of economics, in terms of so many other things. So as you know, an oil economy would like to recover faster. So if you want to recover faster, go back to your normal kind of GDP growth rate, you go for conventional energy because there is tested, is available. So you will see India consuming more oil and other economies also consuming more oil than before. So I think, and they will bounce back very fast in terms of their consumption and demand for oil and all that. China is already back to pre-COVID-19. We are also getting very close to it, not 80%, but we are getting very close to it. And I think 3-4 months, you will see we'll be consuming almost like 90% of what we were doing, let's say, before COVID-19. So we have to be realistic. A role of ethanol in India's energy mix is going to be very, very limited due to the constraints. We would like to be more, but I think we have to look at realistically. I mean, ethanol industry is lobbying very hard, but we have to. The role of ethanol is going to be restricted. Also, natural gas. Right now, natural gas is roughly 7% of India's total energy mix. I mean, it's going to go up gradually to 15% over coming years. We need to push it even harder. So the point I'm trying to drive home is this: that we need more Indian economy. We need more oil. We need more natural gas. We need more renewables, and we need more atomic energy. We have to look at the picture holistically, and then we work out our strategy in terms of storage and investment and everything very carefully. Also, when we talk of energy security, don't we talk about solar energy? Solar is emerging as a big boy on the energy table. Fantastic. But 80% of equipment we are using for solar being imported. So what kind of energy security we are talking about? I mean, instead of importing oil, we import solar equipment. So there again, we need to invest and make sure that actually over a period of time, we become a net exporter of solar equipment. So I think we need to look at things, from all directions and then work out. But conventional energy is, as far as India is concerned, mainly oil is going to be central for our economy, and we need to focus a lot more on oil because oil is going to play a crucial role for the coming 15 years as far as our economy is concerned.
All right. And Sunil Gupta, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, I totally agree with that. Oil is going to be, a key factor for the energy, requirements of a country like India. Our economy will recover to levels that we have seen 7 to 8% growth. So that will be mostly powered by, oil. But yes, one will have to look at alternative sources of energy, electric, renewables. They may be costly now, but we have to involve everybody, the private sector, the innovators, to bring down the cost of technology. And as you are saying, it's all about self-reliant. So let's have some self-reliant technologies that can bring down the cost.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that renewables is no doubt the future, but oil is going to be central for our economy and our energy requirements over at least the next 2 decades. So we have to do everything that we possibly can to try and secure our energy needs. We have to look for assets